Hey, and welcome back to Finding Your Summit podcast. This is Mark Pattison, and I am fired up because this week we have a great guest, Jim Mora Jr., head coach, UCLA football team, also a head coach in the NFL, and has got a 25-year pedigree coaching in the NFL and is now going into his 6th year with, again, the Bruins. So I had a great conversation with Jim. We really went through the early days growing up, what it was like to be with his dad, Jim Mora Sr., and the different places that he moved around to. So stay tuned. It's a great interview, and let's do it. We are here at World HQ in Hermosa Beach, my recording studio, with my best friend, Jim Mora. So, Jim, I have to say I'm cheating just a little bit from the standpoint of a lot of the people that I will be interviewing going forward. I know, or I don't know, and I don't know the answers to a lot of their questions. But what I try to do today is I wanted to go back, and you're a guy of high achievement, and wanted to kind of go through your path. I think a lot of people know you as a coach, but they don't know your roots from growing up and whatnot. So why don't we start? You grew up in a football family. Your dad was a head coach, Jim Mora, coach for the New Orleans Saints and Indianapolis Colts. Tell us what it was like growing up. You didn't just grow up in Seattle.
You're right. My dad was a coach, and so my entire life has really just been about one thing, and that's football. That's very simplistic because there's a lot of other things that are involved with, being involved with football. But I would say this, that every meal that I've ever had, every piece of clothing I've ever bought, has been paid for by football. My dad, started his career at Occidental College, moved from there to University of Colorado. Went to Stanford, then University of Colorado, UCLA, University of Washington. Then he went to the Seattle Seahawks, the New England Patriots. Then he went to the Philadelphia Stars, the United States Football League, the New Orleans Saints, and finished his career with the Indianapolis Colts. So those are a lot of moves for a young guy.
Yeah. So what was it like, though, for you? I mean, every time your dad would come home and, there's like a new thing coming up. What was that like? Were you like in shock? Were you like, Dad, I don't want to leave? Because kids like stability, as you know.
Every move was different. I can remember when I was 6 years old and my dad was at Occidental and being on the bus with him, going to games, and that was really fun. And the move to Stanford was nothing because we were young, and my brothers and I, and it didn't really affect us. The move to Colorado was exciting because I was at an age where I kind of understood that we were moving. It was difficult. I remember the first day of school not wanting to go to school. And then after that, every move became a little bit more difficult. As you get older, you want to have some roots, and you're establishing friendships, and they're deeper and more meaningful. And to have to pull up roots and, those relationships change, it can become very, very difficult. I was lucky, though, in that at age 12, I settled in Seattle and really never left. My dad moved on, but I stayed there and went to the University of Washington, as you know, and then started my own career from there. So my youngest brother, Stephen, as a matter of fact, kind of bore the brunt of more moves than I did.
So when you're talking about Colorado, you're talking about the University of Colorado in Boulder. What a great spot. I've been with you a number of times now to play the Buffaloes, but so you're starting now, you're 7, 8 years old when you're there?
I moved there when I was 11.
When you're 11, okay.
Yes.
So now you're starting football, right? For yourself.
Yep.
And what was
Actually, Mark, I'm sorry. I moved there when I was 7. You're right. I moved there when I was 7. And we lived in Table Mesa, and that's when I started to play football. Yeah,
because I think we started playing, around 8 or 9. I played on the 89ers, so I think it was 8 or 9 years old, right? So
I played on the Judson Jaguars.
Yeah?
We lived on Judson Street, and so I was part of the Judson Jaguars. No, we used to play on Saturday mornings, and, you had your own pants, but you didn't have your own shoulder pads or helmets. And so there'd be a series of games, and if you had like the 10 o'clock game, the 8 o'clock game, they'd wear the pads, and then the 9 o'clock game, the 8 o'clock kids would take their pads, their shoulder pads, jerseys, and helmets off and throw them on the ground. The 9 o'clock kids would come and put them on. And then by 10 o'clock, you're wearing pads that are pretty well beat up for the day, but you're just throwing on a pair of shoulder pads, a jersey, finding a helmet that fits. We didn't have mouth guards in those days.
Right.
And you're just going out and playing ball, and it was awesome.
So your mom must have taken the majority of the brunt. I mean, I've been around you, and I played college football myself, of course, and in the NFL, and that's just the head coach or assistant coaches, that's just a very demanding occupation, right? So your mom, you've got two other brothers too, so
Right.
it's just not you.
No, my mom, Connie, she's always been the anchor. My dad, great dad, obviously, you played for him, so you know how he is. But my mom, she was just the stability in the family, and she worked. She sold real estate. She never missed games. She drove us to practice. There was a dinner, waiting for us on the table when we got home. We got home from school. There's a PB&J waiting for us. And yet she still managed to get us to all the CU games. I remember, taking off my pads and throwing them down and running to the car and hopping in the car and heading over to Folsom Field to watch the Buffaloes play, or running home to watch the Buffaloes on TV, or meeting them at the airport on a Saturday night after a win and or sometimes a loss. So, yeah, she was the stability. She was amazing, and she still is.
So now your dad gets a job at the University of Washington, right?
Yep.
And
well, we went to UCLA for a year.
Okay.
That was a really hard move, actually. And I'll tell you what happens, Mark, is that so you're in Boulder, Colorado, and I was 12, I think, 11 or 12, and you wear a certain type of clothes, and you talk a certain way, and you have a certain group of friends, and all of a sudden you're uprooted and you move to Los Angeles, California, and you don't know what 501 jeans are, and you don't know what, surf lingo, and your haircut's different. And so that's kind of startling, and that's when I first started to notice it. And then we were there for a year. We moved to Seattle, and you go to Seattle, and you'd show up in your 501 jeans with your surfer dude haircut, and everyone's wearing Swabbies and Get Theirs, and, it just, you kind of feel awkward for a while. But my mom was great about helping us assimilate into the kind of culture that we were moving to.
So now you go to Interlake High School, right, which is on the east side. If anybody knows the greater Seattle area, I grew up on the west side, and Jim went to high school and grew up on the east side. So now you're going to Interlake, and you ended up playing with some future Huskies,
Yep.
right? Chris O'Connor,
Tom Flick, Steve Pelluer,
yep.
Yeah, a lot of really good players.
Yeah, I remember you guys were playing in a playoff game, and it was down in Memorial Stadium, and I went down there, and you're playing fullback, I think, or running back.
I played running back. I played defensive safety. I was a long snapper.
And your dad at this point had gone on to the Seattle Seahawks, right?
Yes. What was tough for me is that I had always wanted to go back to University of Colorado. In those days, it was different than now. They didn't really offer you a scholarship until you were a senior. After my senior year, I was preparing to take a trip. They'd asked me to come on an official visit to University of Colorado. And the night before I was supposed to leave, they called and canceled it. So it kind of devastated me because that's where I wanted to go. And then I had a couple of small schools that I could have gone to. What happened is my senior year in high school, I hurt my knee. And I didn't get to play most of the year. I hurt my ACL. I didn't have to have surgery, but it was sprained, and I missed about 6 games. So I really didn't get to play much, and I just kind of fell off the radar. So I ended up walking on at Washington.
I tell this to people all the time. There's another buddy of ours that we're close with, Hugh Millen, and it was interesting because we all three took different paths. I was very fortunate to get a scholarship to the UW. You walked on to the UW. Hugh Millen went down to Santa Rosa JC, ended up coming back, walking on, earned a scholarship, you earned a scholarship, and we all ended up in the same place. Yep. So, sometimes the path isn't always exactly straightforward, for everybody.
Well, I mean, there's many different paths to success, as you know. It's about your willingness to continue to walk the path. There's this great saying about success and reaching it. It says, my dad gave it to me a long time ago. I keep it on my wallet. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's about the search for success is never ending. And the gist of and kind of the punchline line is, does the road wind uphill? And yes, to the very end. And it's like you're always on a mission to succeed. If you ever feel like you've gotten there, that's when you start to experience failure, in my opinion. So we all have different paths to success. The important thing is that, our will to get there, our willingness to work, commit, sacrifice, invest, overcome hardship, disappointment. I mean, I had many disappointments in my life, as did you, and yet somehow we found it within ourselves to just continue to take the next step towards our goals. We weren't going to be deterred.
Yeah, I think a lot of times what you're talking about is the journey, right? Mm-hmm. And you're right. I know in my case, people who saw me catching the winning touchdown against Michigan or another team or whatnot, they would say, "You're so lucky," but they had no idea the hardship that we went through in grinding down in that weight room and running the stairs and all those types of things. And, it just makes you a better person in the long run.
Yep.
And so it's also great for you. You're in this great position now as a head coach to impart that knowledge and that wisdom upon guys, especially today. There's so much more immediate gratification that these guys expect, right?
Yeah. I mean, every day I have an opportunity to go back into my life and pull something out of it and use it as an example for the players that I coach now at UCLA. And it's not always about football, but it's about life and life experiences. And I think it's always great when a young kid can hear a guy, 55-year-old like myself, who now they think is very successful, say, I do understand, and then have an example of why I understand. Saying, yeah, I get it. That's one thing. But here's what happened to me in college. I was a walk-on, and it was tough. And I remember this one practice where, Coach James was yelling at me, and I lost it, and I started to cry. So I understand where you're coming from. And that's just one example, but there's many. And I think that helps me now in what I'm doing with these young men that I deal with every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's go back to a story, and I don't know if you're in high school at this point, but your dad now is coaching for the University of Washington in 1977, and in the 1978, technically the same 1977 season, they go to the Rose Bowl.
Right.
Warren Moon is the quarterback, and I think you got to be the ball boy or something?
I was a ball boy. Yeah, I was a ball boy that year, and so when they played in the Rose Bowl, my brother Michael and I were ball boys in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, so, it's so ironic now that you're the head coach at UCLA and your home field is the Rose Bowl.
Well, I've been able to be a ball boy in the Rose Bowl, play in the Rose Bowl, and now I coach in the Rose Bowl stadium, but we want to win a Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's many people who could say that they were a ball boy for a winning Rose Bowl team, played on a winning Rose Bowl team, and coached a winning Rose Bowl team. So that's a pretty significant goal for me.
Yeah. I remember the only time, considering how far I went in the NFL, that I ever got hurt was when you ran out and you tackled me and you broke my foot.
Well, I don't think that's the way the story goes. I think I had you covered like a blanket, and as we both went for the ball, and I knocked it away, and you stumbled because you were very unathletic, and I landed on your ankle and broke it. That's how I see the story.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting because two people seeing the same incident in very, very, very different ways, But anyways, it was interesting because it forged our relationship, I think, at that point. And so we spent the next 4 or 5 years together playing on the team. Yeah. And, it was fun, too, because winning is fun, and that's what we did back then. And
we were good. We were pretty dominant. We were tough, and we had something special. Yeah.
No, it was great. Okay, so now it's my redshirt 5th year, and you now are a graduate assistant coach.
A student assistant.
A student assistant.
I was still in school, so I was a student assistant.
Yep. So now you do that, and now we go to the Orange Bowl. And now tell us the story how you ended up down in San Diego, because I think it's classic.
Well, I had a couple things. I had thought about going to USC and being a graduate assistant and being in their sports administration school, and Ted Tollner had actually hired me. But I had a dream that I wanted to play. I wanted to coach in the NFL. I wanted to be in the NFL. And I wasn't sure if it was coaching, but I wanted to be in the NFL either as an administrator or a coach. So
And where was your dad at this time?
My dad was he was in New England, I believe, or he might have been in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Stars.
At the USFL.
Yeah, in the USFL.
Okay.
But this is before computers, obviously. And so I typed out letters to every general manager in the NFL and every head coach in the NFL. And at that time, there's 28 teams. So 56 letters I typed out and introduced myself and said, I was willing to do anything to get my foot in the door of the NFL. And I got a number of letters back that said, we'll keep your resume on file, but we have nothing now. And so I wrote everyone back again and said, thank you, please do keep my resume. And I'm sure they, tossed that right in the wastebasket. But fortunately, one person didn't, and that was Johnny Sanders, who was the general manager of the San Diego Chargers at the time. And Johnny Sanders had coached my dad in the CIF All-Star game here in Southern California when my dad was at University High School. So I think that I know you and I and Hugh were out throwing the ball at the creek on a Friday afternoon. I think you and I were throwing the ball, and Hugh came to the door and he said, hey, there's a guy named Johnny Sanders on the phone for you. And I'm like, yeah, right. No, he said the Chargers are on the phone for you. I'm like, yeah, right. And just kind of ignored it. He goes, no, I'm serious. So I went picked up the phone. It was Johnny Sanders. He goes, we want to bring you down for an interview. And it was kind of stunning. But I lucked out. I got a break, and I got a chance to go work for Don Coryell and work with guys like Dan Fouts and Charlie Joyner and Kellen Winslow and Ed White, guys that were Hall of Famers. And it was a great way to start my career in the NFL.
A lot of what you're talking about, there's a lot of aspiring coaches that may be listening to this, like, hey, it was easy because you had the name, but your dad hadn't established himself that much in those days, number one. And number two, it was a lot of persistence. I think there was 28 or 30 teams at the time, and there was 28, so there's 29 letters. Well, there was 28 letters that went out, of which 27 said thanks but no thanks.
Right. Well, there was 28 that came back that said thanks but no thanks, and then I sent them out again. I just was going to be persistent. And, I did get a break, but after you get the break, you still have to make your own way. It doesn't matter who you are or what your reputation is you still have to forge your own path. So while I had the same name as my dad and that helped me get in the door, I still believe it was my work ethic that kept me there and allowed me to continue to progress up the coaching ladder. When I went to San Diego, it was my goal that every single day I was going to be the first one in the office, and I was never going to leave before everyone else had left. I was going to be the last one out. I was going to learn how to do everything. I was going to get a key to everything. I can remember it was like I was going to monopolize information so that I made myself invaluable. They had to have me. Remember when we got a new copy machine, and no one knew how to use it except me. And I would not teach anybody how to use it because I needed them to have me there to make copies for them.
Yeah,
or when
smart.
computers started, started to use computers, I'd never even seen a computer. And I remember Al Saunders, who's the offensive coordinator, goes, Jimmy, do you know how to use a computer? I'm like, absolutely. He's like, okay, you're the computer guy.
Right.
Great, I'm the computer guy. And, for the next 2 weeks, I just stayed up all night trying to teach myself how to use a computer.
Yeah.
So it was just things like that I think make the difference. It's being willing to do the work and show the commitment and put in the time. And not just do it every once in a while, but do it every single day. That's how you become successful.
There's a guy on your staff right now that I think reminds me, or must remind you of you a little bit, Scott White, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Scotty's a great story.
So similar type deal, right? So share that with us.
Scotty played at Washington, and then he didn't make it in the NFL. And he took some small college jobs, some high school jobs, kind of, worked around different places, but was having trouble finding his way to the Division I level. Rick Neuheisel brought him in as a volunteer. Scotty was one of those guys that would just stay around all day, all night working. People don't know this, but he slept in the locker room or his car when he had one. He made no money. He ate at the training table. He worked a second job. When I got the job, I kept him on as an intern. Really didn't pay him anything. He continued to stay we had a player's lounge. He'd sleep in the player's lounge. And I noticed him, but I really didn't get to know him until probably the second year that I was there. And I just said, this guy's he's good. He's always around. He always has the answers. He never says no. He always says yes. If you give him a project and you have an idea of how you want it to be done, it's always done better than you expected. He's dependable. The players respond to him. You can just count on him to be there when you need him. That's why I started watching him more and watching him on the field and watching how he interacted with the players and his knowledge of the game. And he's always watching film and always talking to people about how to reach the players in a different way and coach and teach and things that need to be emphasized. And now he's my linebacker coach and special teams coordinator. And it's just great to see a guy that was willing to make those sacrifices and make that investment. And it's paying off for him because he's going to be I think he'll be a head coach someday.
Yeah, he's got that. Definitely, he's got that same mentality.
But it was never
that you
handed
had.
to him.
No, he had to earn it. Right?
Everyone, you have to earn real success. You have to earn.
Yeah.
in my opinion. I mean, people can hand you things, but if you want self-satisfaction, if you want to be gratified personally, you have to go earn it. You have to earn it. You have to put the work in. That's when you feel like you've achieved something, when it's hard. If it's easy, it's easy. You want it hard.
So speaking of earning it, the name of this podcast is Finding Your Summit. So everybody has a different version. So it's really metaphorically speaking, right? So it could be in business, it could be in coaching, it could be in climbing mountains, or whatever your thing is, right? So let's go back to, you're in San Diego, and we're going to kind of work our way up to now you're a head coach in Atlanta.
Okay.
Right? So now you're in San Diego, and now you have an opportunity to go where? It was in San Francisco?
No. I'd been through 3 head coaches in San Diego, and every time one had got fired, I'd moved up. And the last guy to get fired was a guy named Dan Henning, and now I was out of a job. And I had an opportunity to go to the Cincinnati Bengals with David Shula, and I decided to pass that up to go to the New Orleans Saints and work with my dad.
That's right.
I'd been in the NFL for eight years, so I felt like I had the credibility that I could go and work for my dad now, and people wouldn't think it was nepotism. So I went to New Orleans for 5 years, and from there I went to San Francisco, which was a great place to be, and a tremendous tradition, a great standard of excellence around multiple Hall of Fame players, some of the greatest that ever played the game.
Bill Walsh.
I was mentored by Bill Walsh. I'd go sit in his office almost every day and talk to him about things, have him come to my meetings and evaluate, my teaching style and how I could better reach the players. Became the defensive coordinator there, and then was fortunate to get the opportunity to be the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, so now you're down in, I should say now you're down in.
You were there a lot.
I was down I was. But, so the thing that was great is when you called me and say, hey, I just got the head coach, I was so excited for you, because kind of once you hit that level, you typically get a couple chances no matter how it goes.
Right.
It just seems like that's kind of the whole formula. And I remember going down there. You invited me down there to go to a game, and this is after you got your feet wet, and you had your camps going, and your coaching staff picked, and now we're into the season, and we ended up going to a Carlos Santana concert,
yep.
right in the middle of
City
Atlanta.
Park, yeah.
City Park, yeah. And the thing that was bizarre to me is we were sitting there, we had great seats, and we turned to each other and we're like, hey, let's get some beers. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, you need to go get them. I'm like, what are you talking about? You go get them. He goes, you don't understand. I go, what do you mean? You're right. I don't understand. Help me understand that. And the South is just so much different, and you were so recognizable that you couldn't get from point A to point B without being mobbed. And it was just like an eye opener for me. It's just like,
well, it's different. I don't like that stuff, as you know, but that's the way it is in the South. And we went in there and we had immediate success. We took over a 5-11 team and went 11-5 and went to the NFC Championship game my first year. So, you're this 40-year-old guy, and everyone thinks you're the savior. It'd been forever since they'd been to the playoffs, and there's not a lot that they're more interested in down there than the Falcons. And so people always wanted a piece of you. And that was tough on me because I'm such a family guy that I couldn't even take my kids to the grocery store, to the mall, or to a game without them having to stand off to the side while I signed autographs for an hour. And now it's just part of the deal, but it was an awkward part of the deal for me.
But outside of just being, you're saying, you didn't like it, what was that like? I mean, like, one day we're us, right? And the next day your face is recognized everywhere you go.
Well, it didn't change me.
I understand that, but...
You know that. I mean, it's never changed me. I don't like it, first of all, but I do it because I think it's part of the job, and I think if you're in a position where you have a platform and people want to meet you and they think it's neat, then, I'm lucky. I'm blessed to have the jobs that I've had, so I think it's okay to spend some time with people, but the contradiction was the time it took away from the family. I just tried to stay as humble as possible and not think that I was all that because people wanted my autograph. I realized that it could have been, this book of matches, that if that had been the head coach and they'd gone 11-5, they'd want the book of matches to sign autographs. It wasn't necessarily me. It was just the position of head coach.
Right. And being in the South,
the South's different.
Yeah, the South is different.
Football is a real deal in the South. I mean, it's just, it's different down there. You spent time in New Orleans. I mean, it's like a religious experience for them. It's amazing. I mean, they go to church on Sunday, then they go to the games, and that's what they do.
So now you have immediate success there, and you're down there for 3 years, and then it seems like every head coach, ultimately it ends. It either ends great, which is not very many people, or it ends, it ends, right?
Yeah.
And so I know that was a very difficult transition for you, but you talk about your summits, and it's not all about going up, because
sometimes you got to go down
to go back up. Yeah. So that kind of happened with you, and there was a relationship you had with the GM in Seattle, and so you ended up. I had moved to Seattle from Santa Monica, so it was great for me and great, I think, for the Seattle community. But here you're a hometown kid, that what we considered you. I know you didn't get there till high school or something, but now you end up back in Seattle, and you're with the Seahawks.
Right. Well, I had a chance to be the head coach of the Miami Dolphins after I got fired in Atlanta, but I chose to come back to Seattle because that was home for me. I moved there when I was 12. I did not want to raise my kids in South Florida. I wanted to raise them in the Pacific Northwest, which I still consider home. So I took a job with the Seahawks as the assistant head coach and defensive back coach, and was very happy. It was actually a relief to not be the head coach for a while, but I still wanted to have another opportunity to be a head coach. So I had that opportunity. I had an opportunity with the Washington Redskins, went back and spent time with Dan Snyder, was offered that job, but at the same time the Seahawks, Mike Holmgren decided that he was going to coach one more year and retire, so the Seahawks made me the head coach in waiting, which, looking back on it, was probably the worst decision I've ever made, to stay there as the head coach in waiting and follow Mike Holmgren. It didn't work out right.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look back in past history too, and there's not many guys who have followed the Hall of Fame coach to come in and have immediate success and keep that torch going. I mean, it's just such a hard thing, and people's expectations are so high.
Yeah, well, he's not a Hall of Fame coach, and he won't be a Hall of Fame coach, but he's a damn good coach.
Well, he'd been to a Super Bowl, right? And
he won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and the way that people looked at him in a certain way up there. So that was.
But they won 4 games the year before. I improved his record and still got fired. It was just a weird deal. So
yeah, so it's just I do believe though that sets you up to what I believe is kind of your life's calling.
I agree.
Right?
Every action has a reaction, and you're right. Getting fired in Seattle was the hardest thing that I had experienced, because I felt like I'd let my hometown down, but also led me to where I believe, as you just said, I should be, which is coaching college football at UCLA. And I took the 2 years after I got fired. I worked in television, as you know, and I blew up my knee skiing with you at Crystal Mountain. Great story about that. If we want to go into that, I'll just ask your listeners this. Okay, I won't even give them the punchline. 2 guys go skiing. They're both really good skiers. Okay, one guy blows out his ACL. All right, and one guy goes down the mountain in a toboggan. Are they the same guy?
Yeah, and we'll just ponder that one.
We can just leave it right there. But anyway, so I had the chance to spend about 6 months, 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, 6 months at the University of Washington when Steve Sarkisian was the head coach. And they kind of opened their doors to me. I was over there rehabbing my knee, and they opened their doors and said, hey, you can come in and learn the college game. And I found myself really drawn to the college athlete. I'd be in the training room. The football players were in there, the basketball players, the women's and men's volleyball players, the swimmers, the gymnasts, you name it. They were all coming through there, and they knew who I was because I'd been the head coach at Seattle. I'd played at Washington, and they'd start to ask me kind of life questions, and it felt good to be able to, in a way, mentor them. And so I realized very quickly that where I should be, where I belonged, where I could have the most impact and feel probably the most gratification was coaching in college. And I was lucky to get the UCLA job.
Yeah. We had talked about this before when you were in that space between the Seahawks, and, that was a hard time for you.
Yeah, it was.
I always felt, Hugh Millen always felt, our good buddy who played in the NFL for 10 years, that your best talents were most served in the college game for a couple of reasons. Number one, the NFL head coaching gig is very transient, right? So people are lucky to get, I think the average is something like 2.5 years or something, if that, right? Long. So it's not very long. That's number one. Number two is the way that you can part your knowledge, the way you communicate with really everybody. It's the guy that doesn't have a lot of money, comes from a rough neighborhood, to the, mid-American, type guy, to the guy from the affluent communities. You just have a certain way that you can really relate to that guy. And I think it really showed the first year he came down and you ended up with something like the number 12 class, and this is a guy you, who had never recruited, and you had to assemble a coaching staff together, hit the ground running, go out, recruit. I mean, it was crazy, your timeline to make all that happen.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things Bill Walsh said about me publicly that probably I'm most proud of is he made a comment once that he'd never been around somebody that was more comfortable with a contemporary athlete than I was. And I think what he meant by that was being able to handle the diversity, race, religion, socioeconomic background, political beliefs, all of those things. I kind of have, as you know, the ability to talk to anybody on their level and do it comfortably. So I think that transcends well into college football because you're dealing with kids that a lot of times come from nothing, single-parent households, sometimes no-parent households, raised by maybe their grandma. They've had to struggle to survive, and they're not very trusting sometimes, so you have to earn their trust. And I've just been lucky that for some reason I have an innate understanding of how to build that trust with those guys.
So now you're going into your 6th year
right.
here at UCLA. So what would you say is your craziest recruiting experience where you beamed into somebody's house and it was just, whether it was their house, the environment, or what happened?
Well, there's just many. I can't even tell you what the most bizarre one is because I've been in some situations that it would be hard for people to conceive. I've been in the South in homes where people actually had dirt floors, and they might throw some linoleum over the dirt floor. And not to exaggerate, where they'd have to go outside to the outhouse to use the bathroom. I mean, I've been to those places. I've been here in South Central Los Angeles where, and you've been with me, where, I kind of had to get permission to go into the neighborhood. A hood pass, essentially, is what they call it. And they had to know I was coming. Or, all of a sudden some guy that looks like me driving in, it's like, what's this guy doing here? So we went to the football game.
Yeah. Well, one of those guys you might be talking about, and again, for people, this is kind of part of your life, but for most people, they don't get this exposure. But you went over and had a chat with Snoop Dogg, right?
Yeah, I've been to Snoop's place.
Yeah.
I've been in every little cranny of L.A., and sometimes it's great places, sometimes it's daunting and dangerous places, but there's great kids everywhere. And what I've found is that you can find really good people and really good players and motivated, respectful people everywhere. You just have to sometimes give them a chance. I think we're too quick to judge sometimes, and unless you've lived in a man's shoes, it's hard to understand, why he is the way he is. Great story is Tack McKinley, and who just was drafted in the first round by the Atlanta Falcons. And,
defensive lineman.
Yeah, and people had kind of given up on Tack, and he'd gone to a junior college. And this is a young man that his mother, we never knew his father. His mother disappeared at age 5. He was raised by his grandmother. His grandmother and him used to have to collect cans and bottles in order to eat. Oftentimes he was homeless, or they were staying on friends' couches. Or if they were lucky enough to scrape enough money together, they could live in an apartment. His grandmother died when he was 18, and he made her a promise that, he'd go to a Division I school and he'd make it to the NFL, and he did. And it was just amazing to see him fulfill his promise at the draft in Philadelphia last year. This is a kid that had not slept in a bed until he got to UCLA. So the first few nights at UCLA, he would take his covers and his pillow off the bed and put it on the floor where he felt more comfortable. Got a guy coming in this year from Nigeria who, when he was a youngster, was kidnapped by the militants. They called them the militants. I thought it was Boko Haram, but it wasn't. It was the militants. Who saw at age 12, his very best friend was beheaded right in front of him for trying to escape from the militants, who'd never slept in a bed until he got to the United States. There's story after story after story after story like that. I have a kid coming in this year from the Ivory Coast who moved to Philadelphia when he was 7. He was put into high school when he was 12 because he was so big. It's kind of a blindside story.
Yep.
Just amazing stories, and it's kind of the human will to succeed. And I just love having the opportunity to be in their lives and help. I know what their goals are, and having the chance to help them reach those goals. And sometimes that means some tough love with some of these kids. Sometimes you have to get on them. You have to hold them accountable because they start to get in their comfort zone a little bit, and they forget what they are after and where they came from. And But you have to have built that trust up so that when you do hold them accountable, they understand that it's coming from a place of love.
Yeah, to me, that really showed through with a guy like Tack, right, who is a super intense, emotional guy on the field, and he needed to be able to trust somebody in authority, which was you. And I thought you did a fantastic job of really trying to let him be him, but at the same time within the guidelines of team rules.
It's hard. There's a balance there, and it's really difficult in college because you have to teach them about standards, and you have to teach them about accountability, and yet you have to find a way to let them be individuals, but individuals within the framework of the team, and that's not always easy. And in the NFL, you can kind of err on the side of letting them be individuals. In college, you have to err on the side of making sure they're members of the team, part of the team. I just have a lot of one-on-one conversations with these guys, and I can draw on my experience in the NFL. I can draw on all the experiences I've had with players through the years to try to help them through any misunderstandings or help them understand why things are the way they are, why they're being asked to do what they're asked to do, why they need to conform, what NFL teams are looking for, because they all come to the UCLA football program with the dream of playing in the NFL, why their education is important, because as you know, your NFL career or your college career can end at any time, and you make sure that these kids are taking advantage of every opportunity to be successful on and off the field.
Mm-hmm. So I've got this module that I've created called the 7 Summits of Success. And so when we talk about the word summits, it's a acronym for accomplishment, okay? So S is C, that's your idea, and then you unleash it, then you move it, then you measure it, you improve it, and then you traverse it, okay, before you hit your S, which is your summit, and you pay it forward, right? And last year, due to a lot of reasons, you guys didn't have this kind of season that you wanted to have, right? So there was a lot of adversity that you had to go through, right? And of course, just the nature of being in the public eye and whatnot, people are chirping like,
they're critical.
They're critical, right? It's just the nature of the beast, right?
It is.
But I felt like one of the things that you did, which was really difficult, I know for you, is that many of the guys on your offensive side of the ball ended up going someplace else, and you brought in new staff, and so I really just want to talk about really quickly about new voices, and I think it's so important, and I think that the guys that you brought in have the street cred, and I think they're brilliant, and I think you guys are going to take from where you were last year a healthy quarterback, healthy line, great defense, and you're going to have the kind of season I believe that you probably thought you were going to have last year.
I hope so. I'm very loyal, so anytime it comes time to make a change on my staff, it's really hard for me, but I also have that responsibility as the head coach to make sure that we're always moving in the right direction. So, I had to make some difficult choices. I was very lucky to be able to hire some players that are fantastic, or some coaches that are fantastic, and have done a great job of relating to our players, are very, very great coaches, former NFL players, a lot of great pedigree. So I'm excited about the year. But the most important thing, I think, is that we are back to having the type of culture amongst our team that's important to success. I have a saying that culture precedes success, language dictates culture, and leaders determine language. And right now we have that. We have leaders that are talking the right way. And that language is creating a certain culture, and that certain culture is going to lead to us having success. And that's what I'm excited about. We're all on the same page, moving in the same direction, and we have an opportunity to capitalize on some of this momentum we've built.
So you have a quarterback that's coming back that was hurt most of the year, Josh Rosen. His progress this last spring?
Outstanding. Josh got hurt last year in the 5th game, and he had to sit and watch. I had a great talk with him the other day. It was probably the worst and the best thing that ever happened to him. He was kind of always the golden boy, the anointed one. And all of a sudden, things got really tough on him, and he went to a dark place. But he came out of it, and he realized that he needed to change his approach and his attitude, and that would help him have success. I think he'd taken things for granted, and now all of a sudden it was taken away from him, and he realized how much he loved playing football and loved being a quarterback and loved being a part of a team and loved the respect that comes with it, and he's embraced all of the things that are necessary to get back to being a great player. And now it's not just because he's highly skilled, it's because he understands all the other things that go into being successful. the hard work, the commitment, the sacrifice, the effort, all of those things, the investment you have to make.
You said all those words, and it's awesome. And it reminds me again of you going through your patch between not knowing if you're going to coach again. You wanted to, but didn't know what your path was going to be after the Seahawks gig. And really taking a step back, being humbled a little bit, and really getting that fire back so that when you were in the position again, you put yourself in a position to be out talking to teams like UCLA. You had all the ammo ready to go. You had a book, you had a game plan. And so when you hit the ground running, you were going at full pace. And that's all about preparation meets opportunity, right?
Absolutely. I mean, my dad used to always tell me, just do the best you can do where you are at that moment. And certainly you're preparing for other things, but don't always be looking to the future. Just do the best you can. And in the off season, spend some time and study and talk to people and research, but don't be a social climber. Don't try to climb the ladder too fast, but do as great a job as you can where you are in that moment, and then you will get your opportunities. And I believe in that. I also believe in that, as you said, finding your summit. There's no summit. There's no summit. And you said it, the summit shifts. When you get to the summit, you reach your goal, you immediately need to set a new goal. It's like if you set a standard and you reach that standard, then it's time to reset the standard. If you ever feel like you're at the top, then, it's a quick slide to the bottom, as you know.
Yeah.
So it's always about, to me, setting goals, never feeling like you've made it, readjusting those goals as you go, but never feeling like you've found the summit. The summit's elusive, and that's what makes it so awesome. Is it's elusive. The great people are always in search of it.
Well, one of the things that you talk about is summit, and I know you're not talking about this way, but for those people that don't know, Jim Mora and I were invited to be a part of Chris Long's Water Boy, which is raising money to build water wells down in Tanzania for the people of the Maasai tribe. And we got to go down there. We got to, number one, we raised money, and we kicked butt in terms of the amount of money we were asked to raise, in terms of actually funding our own well, which was, really inspirational. Number two, and we were grateful too at the same time for the people that donated to this great cause. And number two, we actually got to go down and go to these villages. And I know it had a huge impact on me, and it had a huge impact on you. And we talked about that. And, we take it for granted. We're here in Los Angeles, and there's nice cars and houses and the ocean and all these beautiful things around. And down there, it's just, we're talking about putting in a faucet, which changes their life. Water is life, and that's their big saying down there. So I don't know, it had a profound effect on me. And then you and I went and climbed the mountain Kilimanjaro with the other 6 NFL guys in Green Berets. And just that whole experience of just putting life in perspective of the bigger picture of where we're trying to go and accomplish things in life, I don't know, it really just took it down to its core for me.
Me too. I mean, we live in a bubble. It's great to get outside that bubble and see what it's really like. And you're right. I wouldn't say it was life-changing. It was life-altering to see really how simple it was to help someone else, to make an impact on somebody else in a very, very profound way, and life-changing, not just moment-changing where they had instant gratification, but this is life-changing stuff that we were doing for these people.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. And I had another great opportunity to go to Iraq on a USO tour, and it was the same type of thing. You're over there and you're seeing these soldiers, and they're thanking you for coming. God, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. You're like, no. Thank you for what you're doing. They're living in containers. They're getting shot at every day. They're thousands and thousands of miles away from their families. So, we've been lucky because being in sports, it allows us a chance to do some of these really unique things and serve other people.
Well, not only that, but I think I was so grateful to be part of that because I'm not a coach. And you put yourself through hard work and dedication in a position to be that change agent for all these guys we're talking about that you go out and recruit and come to UCLA. And what a wonderful gift you've been able to give those guys.
It's the best. It's the coaching part, the winning the games, that's fantastic. But it goes away. When the game's over, everyone starts talking about the next game and you have to win that. But when you know that you impacted a life and changed it forever, or changed the direction of a family forever because you gave someone an opportunity and then you held them accountable to that opportunity, and then those people come back, those kids come back and they thank you years later then you know that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's just
when
awesome.
You know you're doing the right thing.
I am pumped up for this year. I'm super thankful and grateful that you've allowed me to go on all the road trips with UCLA and the way that UCLA family has embraced me in terms of just respecting who I am and letting me kind of go and come inside the locker room and on the field and all those things. It's amazing. I mean, who else gets to do that? So it's a wonderful gift for me. But for all those people out there, Jim Mora, quality guy, class act, best friend. And I just think there's great things ahead for you where you're taking this program and again, the kind of leadership that you can give to all these different kids that come to your school.
Well, thanks. I mean, it's been fun. And it's, as you said, best friends. When you're experiencing the things in life that you like to do and you're getting to do it with someone that you're close to, we've known each other. We met when we were seniors in high school. That's what makes it pretty special. When you're doing it alone, you're walking the journey alone, it's okay. But when you get to do it with someone that you care about, that's what makes it really special too.
Well, my mom is down here from Seattle, and she's sitting across the table right now, and she was a cheerleader. Yeah, she was a cheerleader up there for the UW, so we'll get her down here on the sideline and get her in a Bruin uniform.
I don't know, she might run out on the field and tackle somebody. No one paying Pattison.
That's right. She's got some fight in her. We know that. So, hey, listen, I totally appreciate this. This has been amazing. We're here in beautiful, sunny Southern California, outside on a Friday afternoon doing this. So great appreciation. Thank you. And we'll do this again, okay?
Absolutely. My pleasure. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the Find Your Summit podcast. We are so glad to have you along for this journey. And if you enjoy the show, please tell a friend, share it on iTunes, spread it to the planet. We're looking to broadcast this to every person that is out there because, as you know, everybody has their own summit that they're going after. If you're looking to follow my journey, you can find that through my social links on markpattisonnfl.com. That's M-A-R-K, Pattison, P-A-T-T-I-S-O-N, NFL.com. So, until the next podcast, just remember, clear eyes, full hearts. It takes a little more to make a champion, so make it happen. Thank you. Bye.